Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Phil Mackintosh, chief economist at Nasdaq, for an update on COVID-19 data, which actually appears to be improving a bit in the United States. And Phil, let's take a look at our first couple of charts where you can see some improvement in vaccination progress and case count, which is interesting as the work from home trade is working today.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I woke up this morning and saw that the Nasdaq was up and a lot of the old economy stocks were down. And it's like, this reminds me of when COVID was getting worse, the first wave, the second wave, the work from home trade. And it turns out what we're seeing is actually Merck has stopped developing a couple of its drugs that were in testing. And so we are having a little bit of a work from home trade right now, because the reality is the COVID data is mostly pretty good. So as you said, the US case count, the new cases is coming down. The currently hospitalized has been decreasing for a week or two now. We're seeing the same throughout a lot of Europe, although not all of Europe. And you're right, like the amount of COVID vaccines that are getting out and into people's arms is increasing day after day. And we're now over 1 million injections per day in the US. So things are actually pretty good on the COVID front. But today's move in the market is really all about Merck and its COVID vaccine testing being withdrawn.
And what's even more promising is the vaccination in Israel is working. We can see that in the chart.
Yeah, so Israel is probably the best at getting the vaccinations into people's arms right now. It's got around about over 25%, over a quarter of the population now vaccinated. It has had a pretty significant second wave, so it's hard to tell whether the vaccines are having an impact yet, just because it's so early on. But what this chart does show is that for the people that are vaccinated, they're getting COVID a lot less frequently than the people that aren't still. So that's the people that have the vaccination are that middle color blue in the chart, and the people that haven't yet, or the overall population, is the dark blue line. So it looks like the vaccine is as effective as it was seen in the tests. And you can see already that it's starting to have an impact at the top line in terms of people contracting coronavirus in Israel. So that's good news.
That is good news. And while the US is showing slight improvement, we are still struggling with logistics to get vaccinations distributed more broadly. That said, we are somewhat the best house on a bad block relative to Europe.
Yeah, I guess we're actually not doing as badly as I guess the media might be saying in terms of getting the COVID vaccine distributed. We're getting close to having 5% of the population vaccinated. There's some interesting stats too, just talking about how many people have had coronavirus in the US. I mean, obviously we've had millions of people with known cases. There's probably a lot of people that were asymptomatic or weren't sick enough to go and get tested early on. So there's a theory that maybe 20 to 30% of the population has immunity because they've had COVID as well. So America might actually be getting a little bit closer than it thinks to the levels we need for herd immunity as well.
Well, let's hope that theory is accurate at the end of the day. And finally, Phil, the COVID-19 housing trade continues to outperform. We're seeing that in the inventory data.
Yeah, this is one of the things that we know has happened during COVID is people want to get out of multifamily homes and into single family homes. And you can see the housing inventory is at multi-decade lows because people have been doing just that. And also, if you're already in a house or if you're buying a new house, you can see renovations. So major household appliances, the hardware and building materials space has had really strong demand. We know that from the inflation data. And what this chart here is showing is that the margins in those sectors are actually increasing pretty dramatically as well because of all the demand for people doing extensions and getting their houses ready to work from home. So we've talked a lot about the winners and losers from coronavirus, and housing and all of the sort of renovation space has been one of the winners. And you can see that in this data.
All right, Phil, thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.